This is Doug DeMuro, and today I'm going to talk about the Lamborghini Countach. I own a Countach, you can see it right here in the background, and everyone is always coming up to me and saying, yeah, it's really cool, but isn't it horrible? Like, yeah, it looks so neat, but isn't it terrible to drive? Isn't it just an awful car to actually drive? This is one of the primary things that people know about the Countach, or at least think they know, based on the number of people who say it to me. So today I'm going to tell you why it's wrong. Today's video is brought to you by Cars and Bids, my online enthusiast car auction site that recently sold this, and this, and this, and this, and this. Check it out at carsandbids.com. Okay, so let's talk Lamborghini Countach. Backstory, I bought my Countach over there last September, so September of 23. And so as I'm filming this, I've had it for about 8 months. And of that time, it was gone for about 2 months getting a big service. So basically, I've been driving it for 6 months, and in that time, I've put roughly 650 miles on it. Now, 650 miles, in my view, it's not enough time to really become an expert on a car. Carrera GT, I've got 3,200 miles in my Carrera GT, and I'm still learning things. And I think like a normal family car, you can learn pretty quick, but these are complicated cars that have some interesting habits and characteristics, and it really takes time to get to know it. So I don't feel like I'm completely a Countach master at this point yet, with only 650 miles under my belt. But previous to this, my Countach experience had been limited to about 10 miles shooting videos. And obviously, 650 miles in a Countach is a lot more than, I would say, most people who probably have 0 miles of Countach driving experience. And I bring this up not to gloat, but just to say that given how many people have never really had Countach seat time, it's amazing to me just how often people come up to me and ask me, sometimes tell me, it's awful to drive. For a car that so few people have driven, boy, have they made up their minds about the badness of the driving experience. So I've driven mine now 650 miles in 6 months, on its way to over 1,000 miles a year, which frankly is a lot for any exotic car, let alone a Countach. And the reason I've been driving it so much, the driving experience is absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. And today I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So the Countach, when people talk to you about how it drives, the main thing they think they know is it's cramped inside, it's hard to see out of, it's slow, and it handles like a truck. Those are the big complaints I hear. So let's start with the first three. It's cramped inside, it's hard to see out of, and it's slow. All of these things are true, all of them. But if you're complaining about this stuff, in my opinion, you're entirely missing the point of the car. First off, it's slow, that criticism. Well, yeah, by modern standards, the Countach is slow. My Countach has 375 horsepower. And even though it was the fastest production car on the planet back when it was a new car, these days, it's barely getting off the line faster than a minivan. That is true. And frankly, you don't exactly jam the throttle and do a drag race at each stoplight. The car is over 40 years old, so I drive it pretty carefully in most circumstances. It's even slower under my stewardship than it could be, but I'm not driving this for the speed. And indeed, that's kind of the point about this criticism. Speed isn't really my purpose. This is what most people don't understand. These days, speed is easy. A Kia EV6 electric compact crossover is quicker than my Carrera GT. A Tesla Model 3 is quicker than a Lamborghini Aventador. Speed is not rare anymore. It's not hard to find. It's not unusual. What is unusual, and is what's becoming more uncommon in the car world, is experience. And this is what people, I think, don't get about the Countach. Is the Countach slow by modern standards? Sure, but it's amazing. You get in that car and the sound is absolutely crazy. You're rowing gears in a gated manual transmission hooked up to a giant carbureted V12 literally inches behind your head, and it's absolutely screaming when you drive it around. That experience you cannot replicate. You can replicate speed very easily with any electric car, but that's harder. And that experience to me is better than speed. You're driving down the street, it's loud, it's screaming, everyone is freaking out all around you. Holy crap, there's a Countach. People are taking photos. I drive it with music on, so my favorite songs, always fast ones in that car. They're blasting out the stereo, you're hammered into the next gear, you're sitting, it feels like 6 inches off the ground, it's loud, it's cool, it's fast, the music. That is an experience. And yeah, so is it fast? Not really, but every single time I drive this car around, I come out absolutely ecstatic with a massive smile on my face. I just get so excited. And frankly, I openly just laugh when I drive around in this car. It's so special and so absurd and so unlike anything else. It is a total kick in the face. I love it. So you can sit here and say, yeah, it's slow. Well, fine. I mean, it's slow based on the numbers, based on today's numbers, whatever. But by God, it's fun. It's fun. And in an era when the electric cars have totally sanitized the driving experience, the thing that we need more of isn't speed, which is easy, it's enjoyment. And this car makes driving more enjoyable than any car I have ever driven. So next, let's talk about the next two complaints. Number one, it's cramped, and number two, it's hard to see out of. Again, people who say this stuff are totally missing the point. I'm gonna tell you a little story. The Countach was created by a brilliant Italian designer named Marcello Gandini, and it was purely a design study. Most people don't realize this. It was created as a concept car. Gandini was experimenting with wedge designs in this era in the late 60s and early 70s, and he had also created the Alfa Romeo Carabo concept car and the Lancia Stratos Zero. Both were total concept cars with the wedge shape that never went into production. And when he created the Countach, it was the same deal. The company he worked for, Bertone, they wanted to have a special concept car at every major European auto show. So the 1971 Geneva show rolls around and he decides to design, with Lamborghini's consent, a concept car like the Stratos Zero and like the Alfa Carabo. And it was called the LP500 concept. And he figured, same as the other two, not going into production, but another experiment with the wedge shape. But Lamborghini was a crazy company in its infancy, and they wanted to make a splash. And the concept car got a huge reception when it was shown at Geneva in '71, so they decided to build it. That's an amazing story because engineers weren't even consulted when the car was designed. There was no need to contact engineers because it was a concept car. It was never going to be put into production. And then it got all this press and fanfare, and Lamborghini decided to build it. And then they had to figure out how to actually do that. It was designed first by a stylist, a designer, with no borders and no boundaries, by someone who just wanted to create art. That's what the Countach was born as. And then by some miracle, it actually became a production car. That's amazing. To have a design that is untainted by engineering needs and platform requirements and dumb regulations to actually reach production. Now, admittedly, that early concept car was altered by engineering in order to actually work as a road car, but not that much. And to this day, it's generally considered to be one of the all-time greatest and most striking designs in the entire history of the automobile. Now, I say this because when you're driving the car, you're basically driving art. That's how I view it. Yes, it's cramped inside and it's hard to see out of, but folks, this isn't a Honda Civic. This is a tremendously special and exciting and one-of-a-kind car. Compromise is part of the experience. Yes, they could have made it more practical, but then you're missing the point. The joy in this car is in its impracticality. The fact that something that was essentially a design study was actually put into production by a crazily fledgling company willing to take risks. So when I hear this complaint, I think it's so stupid. It's not like I'm driving this car to the grocery store or taking around my kids to soccer practice. Like, this isn't a daily usable car. Practicality is not my primary focus. This is a car you drive on a special occasion when I've spent the last 3 days at the park with my son. I've been driving my family around in my station wagon. I want a shakeup. I want something different and crazy. I want a certain level of impracticality and absurdity. That's when you drive the Countach, and it just delivers. Now, the other complaint I hear is that the Countach handles poorly. People say, doesn't it drive like a truck? This one, I don't know where it comes from. The Countach, for all its insanity, is actually a pretty nice car to throw around by 1980s standards. It's no Miata, to be clear, but it came out in like 1974. So I've driven other cars from this era, and unless you want to write off all 1970s and 80s cars as saying they drive like a truck, the Countach is definitely no worse than some of the better sports cars from its era. It weighs only around 3,000 pounds. The engine is in the middle. It's low. It has no power steering, so it's very weighty and direct. I don't know, I'm not really flinging it around, and it wouldn't be my first choice for a mountain run, but it drives like a decent sports car of its time. And I think that complaint is weird, to be honest. And I think that complaint is the biggest indicator that someone has never actually driven a Countach. Or maybe they have driven a Countach, but literally no other car from this era to be able to understand kind of where it comes from. I mean, I think a Countach drives at least as well as an F40, which also has the same problem of heavy steering and a low seating position and visibility drawbacks, but the difference is the F40 also has no brakes. So I don't really see how this is a flaw of the Countach. The F40 came years later, and it was still like that. The other thing I wanted to address here is how all of these rumors get started. Why do people think the Countach is so awful and compromised? And I think the main reason is quite simply that the Countach was neglected just in general for a long time. In the 1990s and in the 2000s, it was common to see these cars available for sale for 50 grand. My particular car, I was very lucky. It was owned by one owner from 1985 until 2020. And that person did a $35,000 service back in 2005 and addressed a lot of the major issues. But back then, the car was barely worth $35,000. I mean, that is an exaggeration, but the service was probably half the value of the car, honestly, at that time. And most people back then, when faced with a service bill like that, they would have just kind of kept the car running rough and just deferred the maintenance, done a few things, just keep it going, you know, and that's exactly what happened to a lot of Countaches. And I think that a lot of people, as a result of that, drove rough examples and formed these conclusions. They took 10 tries to start. Mine starts right up. The suspension was falling apart. The engine was only firing on half the cylinders, and people thought, hey, this thing sucks. Contrast that with most Ferraris from this era, especially the V12s. They were always valuable cars. They were always desirable cars. People always kept them in good shape. They never fell into cheapo hands. And so a lot of Countaches were neglected, and that was reflected in the driving experience. The good news is all of that is changing. These days, the very worst Countach is a $250,000 car. Nice ones are over $1 million. So people can now justify putting real money into them to make them right again. And I think they will. I think you're going to see a lot of Countaches in the coming years going back into excellent shape, and hopefully the reputation begins to turn around once people start spending time in nicer ones. And also once people realize that it's more about feel and insanity and art and beauty and passion than overall speed. And this car delivers passion better than any car I have ever driven in my entire life. And for that reason alone, yeah, the Countach is a blast to drive.